everyone. I hope you are doing well. If you're new here, hi, my name is Aisha. I'm a business growth consultant and a success coach. I help people skyrocket their business online and also expand their wealth consciousness so that they're able to attract the money, the success, the wealth that they're truly desiring. Okay. So in today's video, there was this interesting question that one of my clients asked me. And I think, as I said, it wasn't something I could deliver in 2 minutes. And I was like, this is a deeper conversation because so many of us go through this thing wherein we are not willing or we're not able to forgive ourselves for our past mistakes, to be able to move on and create more space for the money, the abundance, the wealth that we truly want to attract. Okay. Because if you are in that state or that being of like feeling guilty or feeling ashamed of yourself, right? Wherein it's like shame of who you are and who you have been, or the guilt of having made some mistakes in past, no judgment here. Okay. And you're not able to forgive yourself, so you're constantly marinating in that guilt or in that shame. Shame is worse, by the way. So if you have one of these things, it makes it very hard for you to be a vibrational match to the things that you're calling in, no matter the amount of work, the amount of success, skills, or anything that you're putting out there towards your goals. You will struggle to magnetize it because you are in that low vibration of feeling guilt and feeling shame. Okay. So instead of going into that shame and that guilt, let us first allow ourselves and separate ourselves. I think this has been the most beneficial, because the thing with you straight away going and processing that shame and that guilt that happens is you get stuck in that healing vortex. Because I know you must have done some sort of healing. You must be going to therapy, or you must have like understood how to feel your feelings and all of that, like on a practical level. Now it is the things that we're going to discuss in this video are for you to get shifts like that. It's for you to understand, like, how do I move on from this? Okay, just 1 second. We're still figuring out the technicalities of YouTube, so yes, we're going to deal with that. um okay, so as always, I make notes. I like to go things the structured way and create frameworks so that you're able to actually see change, and this doesn't remain one of those inspirational or motivational videos you saw once and that's it. I really want my videos to be a way of transformation for you, so that you are not only consuming these things but also internalizing them and taking action steps. Okay. So the first thing I would say is you need to separate your self-worth from the mistakes that you have made. Okay. Or you are making, or you think that you're going to make, because mistakes are literally mishaps. Okay. That's how you learn, that's how you grow. That's another conversation which we'll get into, but you need to separate your self-worth from the mistakes that you think you have made. Okay. Because the reason we let these things affect us as deeply as they do is because of the approach that was used in order to correct our mistakes when we were younger. Okay. So the meaning that we associated as as young people in our life towards mistake is the reason we are not able to move on from it, or like feel so guilty and so ashamed, is because of the way we were corrected when we were growing up. Okay. So it made it feel like we are bad if we mess up, and to be worthy we have to be good. To be worthy of love, we have to be good. To be worthy of anything good that has to happen in our life, we have to be good, when that is not the reality. I know so many like super rich people who are not as good in character. I know so many people who have amazing things happen to them, but they're not necessarily the best people in the world, right? The things that happen to you in this life, or the abundance of miracles that you attract, it has nothing to do with how good of a person you are. Okay, that's a conversation for another day. We're dipping into so many different conversations, but that is what I mean when I say you don't have to be mistake free. You don't have to be good to be able to like achieve good things or receive good things or let good things happen to you. That's like a whole false narrative. The reason we believe that is because the way we were corrected when we messed up. Maybe you spilled food when you were growing up, or you dropped something, or you caused some havoc, or you threw things around and the people around you sort of like made a bigger fuss or made you feel guilty for those things or shamed you for those things. So now, every time you mess up, every time you do something wrong, that voice, that shame, that guilt that you experience when you were like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whenever that you did, that starts playing up again in your mind, which tells you you're shameful human being, or you shouldn't have done that, and that starts pressing in your mind. And I know what you're going to say, the things, maybe the things that you've done, you're like, those were not so small, Aisha. You don't know the things I've done. The reason I'm telling you to separate your self worth from your mistakes is because it doesn't matter. Okay. I will get to the part wherein you will understand how can you move on from these mistakes and allow more things to happen, let go of that resentment towards yourself. Okay. So you need to understand, where did this thing started happening, wherein your mistakes became your self-worth. You started associating your self-worth with your mistakes. You messed up, you're not worthy of love, success, anything good to happen. Because you messed up, because you made that mistake, you're unworthy. You should, nothing good will ever happen to you because you're worthy. And you start feeling that shame, you start feeling that guilt because of the meanings you're attaching to the mistakes that you could have made. Okay. Second thing, I want you to change your mindset around mistakes. Okay. So if you start asking yourself, okay, instead of being like, was that mistake good or bad? Okay. Or was that attitude or that behavior, was that good or bad? I want you to ask yourself, is it beneficial or detrimental to who I want to be? Okay. Maybe it's something you did in the past and you want to stop, or you're doing that and you want to stop any of those things. I want you to ask yourself, was that thing beneficial or detrimental? Stay with me. I'm getting to the point. Was that thing beneficial or detrimental to who you want to be? Okay. Even back then, when you messed up, was it beneficial or detrimental to who you wanted to be back then? Okay. And you will have your answer instantly. Okay. Now that you're redefining the you, the reason you feel guilt, the reason you feel like I shouldn't have done that is because the you that did those mistakes is not the same that you are now. Okay. So why are you punishing this you for those mistakes? You're not that person anymore. You're literally not even that person anymore. Let that sink in. All the things that you did back then and you were like, this is detrimental or this is beneficial to who I am, you're not that who. The one who messed up, you're not that person now. And the reason you have the clarity that that's not you is the guilt that you're feeling right now is the evidence that that's not you. If you didn't feel guilt for the things that you did back then, I would be like, yeah, that is you. You messed up, you had the same mindset, you had the same thought process. Because you evolved from that mistake, you are where you are now, is the evidence that you're not that person. So you got to stop punishing yourself for those mistakes, the one you are right now. Okay. Two things we did. Firstly, how you connected your self-worth and how to your mistakes. Okay. Linking it back to it, the reason that happens is because of the way you were corrected before. Secondly, changing your mindset around those mistakes. Okay. Mistakes that you committed, and understanding how those were detrimental to the who you are being right now. Thirdly, and this is the most important step. Okay. This is like the inner work. Thirdly, understanding and identifying that inner shadow aspect of you that has become that negative critic for you. Okay. Maybe visualize this person like a policeman or someone who's disciplining you, whatever naturally it comes to you. Close your eyes and visualize this aspect to you, this part of you that keeps nagging, that keeps speaking down at you, that keeps shaming you, making you feel guilty. That is like that self critic. Let it show up and tell you everything that it has to tell you. Okay. Like become familiar with that voice and disassociate that voice from your own voice. That is how you understand who's running the show. When you separate that negative voice from your own voice. Because the real, your higher self, that that true, that compassionate, that version of you that is absolutely like, oh my god, I you want to become a good person. That person is, that voice in you is very compassionate. That voice in you is awakened. That voice in you like speaks to itself softly. That is a very humbling and loving and compassionate and higher self. That is your real voice. That is your real soul. Everything, all of these other dark shadow aspects of you that you built up throughout your life, those shadow aspects are just there as managers of you. So every time you have that inner critic pop up in your mind, you have to tell yourself, this is not me. This is that policeman. This is that negative shadow aspect of mine, without shaming them, by the way. That's another thing that people do wrong. I don't want you to shame your dark shadow aspects. I don't want you to shame that critic. I want you to just start listening to that, disassociating from it. Okay. Because the more you allow this dark shadow aspect of you to have that voice to tell you what it wants to say, you will identify that that shadow aspect will firstly identify that it's shaming the wrong person. Okay. And then when I work with my clients on an intimate space, one-to-one containers, we do this with like we do this in the session where we're doing shadow work. We're releasing that negative aspect of you. It's like it just happens so fast. That behaviors and that patterns shift so fast because you're doing with someone. Like I am an expert in shadow work and internal family systems, so I'm able to do it. But if you're doing this for yourself, I would say firstly become aware about that voice and start disassociating from that voice. Okay, that's the third step. The fourth step is distancing and separating your self worth from that mistake. Okay, this goes back to the first point that I made, but this is where you take active actions. As I said, once you have disassociated from that inner critic, then you have to understand the focus now was on the mistake. Now the focus gets to be on you. Okay, I am inherently a good person. I have worth because like I am worthy because I'm worthy. There's no question. Whether I do something or I don't do something, it doesn't diminish from my worth. I was born with this. Okay. Like my worth is never in question. You should have those things playing in your mind. That comes with a lot of like self concept work, affirmations, inner belief, self confidence, self esteem, self worth, all of those things. So that has to be a lot higher, wherein you are like that's never in question. So even if I even if I messed up in the past, I messed up now, or if I mess up in the future, that doesn't dictate anything about my self-worth. Okay, of course we must have committed mistakes. We will seek forgiveness from it, from Allah, from from people who we have messed up with. We will forgive ourselves, we forgive them. It's part of life. Okay. Third is understanding that mishaps and mistakes are very important to our growth. Okay. So if you didn't mess up, you wouldn't have learned the lesson you were supposed to learn. If you didn't mess up, your understanding in that particular thing wouldn't have been what it was. It's hard to say, but I'm so glad for the things that I did that I was shaming and feeling so guilty for the longest time. Because if I didn't make those mistakes, if I didn't feel that level of shame and guilt, I wouldn't have made changes towards myself. I wouldn't have changed myself. I wouldn't have worked so hard with so much conviction to be a better person if I didn't have made those changes. That if my life was just going like that and I made a few mistakes and I let those things. This is for people who feel guilty, by the way, who are generally like, I shouldn't have done that. Okay. So if you're like, you know what, recognize that, then that is it. Okay. I want you to identify what is the wisdom that you got from that mistake. What has that taught you that you now are like, oh my God, I'm so glad for this lesson that I learned from it. Okay. There were certain mistakes that I did in my life that made me feel such extreme powerlessness and guilt that I was almost to the point of like, I decided that I am like, this is what needs to change. That was so wrong of me. I need to work on my inner self. I shouldn't let my triggers affect me this way. I shouldn't let it affect my kids. I shouldn't let it affect my life. I saw the way my mistakes, my behaviors were impacting others in my life. And that helped me become who I am now. Okay, so that shame and guilt that you felt back then, you have to go back to those feelings and understand that that was needed back then for you to become who you are now. And I know these things on a surface level seem like, okay, fine, that's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. But really gaining wisdom and being like, I'm so glad that happened, because if that didn't happen, I would still continue to be who I was back then. Okay, so maybe you were messing up, you were gradually messing up, taking yourself in that wrongful directions, but then you did those massive mistakes. Okay, so and then you went like stumbling down. Okay, massively you messed up. And when you stumbled down, you had those moments of like, oh my God, what was I thinking? What was I doing? And from those deep stumbles of these big mistakes that you did, these mishaps or things that you're not able to forgive yourself for, you start taking that upward motion. You started slowly identifying yourself, feeling bad that I shouldn't have done that. I should be a good person. And then you started praying. Maybe you started seeking therapy. Maybe that guilt helped you become a better person. Maybe you picked up a book. Maybe you felt bad and you apologized to that person. Something somewhere happened, because I know people who are consistently going bad and going bad and going bad, and they continue to do that. So that mistake that happened was the reason that you took off into a positive momentum. So if it weren't for those mistakes, if you were just messing up on a slower pace, you probably wouldn't even have noticed that you messed up. But now that you have that awareness, you're like, oh my God, yes, I messed up, and that mistake put you in the forward motion wherein you were accepting, you took accountability, you took responsibility for your actions, you decided to make positive changes. And that is who you became now. So, why are you firstly feeling shame for that particular thing? Okay, for that vulnerable, guilty person. Why are you shaming them anymore? They already are feeling a lot of shame, that past version of you. We have to stop shaming them for the mistakes that they did and be glad that they did those and made those positive moments, and stop being bad to who you are now. Okay, and start understanding that, like, the person you are now, that person doesn't deserve this. So you need to start actively practicing forgiveness. And like I always say, you can't force forgiveness. You can just keep bringing awareness, keep bringing awareness, keep bringing awareness to the point that it's just like, yeah, of course I see that. You have to see yourself in those vulnerabilities. There are things that, this comes with mom guilt as well. I always felt like I wasn't a good mom to my son because I was going through a lot of like personal stuff. I could never really connect with him. And like the first few years of his life, it was very difficult for him and for me. So I always felt guilty that I wasn't a good mom, or I messed up, or I felt like, I can never go back. I ruined him. He must be having so much trauma from having me as his mother. And I had like all of those things because I was so depressed. He might end up being depressed. And I had all of these, and I would cry for nights and days. And every time from that, like I would yell at them or be pissed at them or lash out and things like that. I would go back into that guilt and that shame, and I found it very hard, like as a mother. Oh my God, it was the worst thing. But I had to stop feeling that and stop attracting those experiences. Firstly, understanding, seeking forgiveness, and then understanding what positive changes are needed to do. Now we have an amazing relationship. So if I didn't mess up that bad, I probably wouldn't have gotten to having this good relationship. Okay. There are like a million ways that you could have messed up. I'm not sitting here on a high horse. We've all made mistakes. Okay. Some worse than others. We often make these mistakes, but it's about understanding and forgiving. First is separating it from your self-worth and normalizing that, you know, we will keep making mistakes. That's another thing. You will mess up, you will make that bad decision, you will have all those things, but it's about understanding and separating that inner critic voice from yourself. Okay, and then moving on from that thing and deciding what positive actions I gotta do, so that I'm not going to do that. And one of the best ways for you to do that is asking yourself again and again, what I'm doing right now, is it beneficial or detrimental to what I'm trying to become? if the person you're trying to become, if it's normal, like I want you to like almost like this, I mean, for things which are like really taking you down the wrong road, you have to ask yourself that question. But if it's like everyday things, um wrong investments, it could be something that you messed up, something you forgot, irrational stuff that comes up in your mind, and you're like, oh my god, we have that habit. We're like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, I forgot about this, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that, I'm so sorry, I know I messed up there, and then you're pushing yourself in that guilt. Okay, so normalize that mistakes will happen. It's about what you learn and you don't repeat from that. And then the more you start forgiving yourself and seeing yourself, like not pushing away that guilt, okay, experiencing that guilt and that shame, you will also start finding a passion for others in your life, and it becomes easy for you to forgive them and to forgive yourself because you have experienced making that mistake, seeing yourself in that mistake, and then forgiving yourself for that mistake. And that is, my friend, how you practice self forgiveness and actually move on from it so that you're able to attract more money, more wealth, more success in your life without carrying that shame and guilt. And if you like that, follow for more.